travelled, and if you're local, then aren't you lucky? What an amazing cinema. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much to Mike for coming out, and thank you to Sci-Fi London for basically me twisting Louis' arm to screen this movie so I could see it again on the big screen. Because it was in the cinema for far too little time, which is the big tragedy of the film, because forget the ending there, So, good evening, my name is Tom Hunter. I am the director of the Arthur C. Clarke Award for Science Fiction Literature, so books rather than film. Mike is a shortlistee for the prize a couple of years ago with this very book. Before we go into a Q&A, I really want to give you a chance to talk to Mike as well. Who's seen the film before?
Yes, twice.
Twice? Who spotted Mike? First guy, you're in there, aren't you? I think I saw you got shot in the head.
I'm the second guy who dies at the fence. I pointed my light to him.
What was it like just being there on set, being shot in the head as a hungry, and seeing all of the words from page to film just coming to that one moment? Presumably you weren't there for very long. They just shot you and you were back in the canteen by midday.
It was 3 days. We were there for 3 days. I think that Dave Gibbons sort of encapsulated this. I met him in San Diego just before the Watchmen movie came out, and I said, "What's it like?" And he said, "It's like someone stuck a camera in my ear and filmed the inside of my head." it was just so weird and so wonderful, sort of walking around in this world that I'd had a part in making up.
And where was that actually being filmed? This is in the base.
Yes.
So you're on the fence. You're shot in the face, I think.
Yeah. That's the only bit that we didn't film in the Midlands. Most of it was filmed in and around Birmingham, Dudley, Cannock Chase, Stoke-on-Trent. That bit, the bit where the base falls, the whole of the exterior of the base is a disused USAF base in Oxfordshire, Upper Hayford. And we have history. We've been to Upper Hayford a couple of times in the 80s, back when cruise missiles were sighted there. It was one of the RAF bases that had been given to the US military to house cruise missiles. So we used to lie down in front of the fence and then get carried away by the police. We were in CND in the 80s. And we finally got to push the fence down. It only took 30 minutes.
Were you having a little bit of revenge on the area?
It felt like that.
So I believe it's true that this whole project, novel, movie, actually just started very simply as a short story in a collection. Is that right?
It did, yeah. And it was a short story that basically I'd been invited by Charlene Harris and Tony Kellner to supply a story for one of their themed anthologies. They used to do this every year. And it was a very cool thing. They would give you a theme. The theme was always something really banal, everyday, ordinary. Like it might be home improvements or family holidays. And then the brief is write a really messed up story, a dark horror story or fantasy story based around that theme. And the year that I said I would do it, the theme was school days. And I didn't come up with any decent ideas. I sat there for a few months coming up with a lot of bad riffs on Harry Potter. And then I woke up one morning, I was in Norway for the Raptors convention in a hotel room that had very, very bad heating. So I was cowering in bed, and I just had this idea popped up in my mind of a little girl in a schoolroom writing an essay, and the essay is what I want to be when I grow up.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a zombie. So, she doesn't know that, but we do. We know that growing up is not an option for her. And that was the sort of the seed of what became the story. I wrote the story in 4 days, sent it in, and then I kind of couldn't put it down. I couldn't put the character down, I couldn't put the world down. So I kept on sort of coming back to it.
Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were supposed to be writing something else for your novel, because you've written several books for Orbit. They were kind of urban fantasy style, and then this one's out as M.R. Carey rather than Mike Carey.
Well, at this point I wasn't either Mike Carey or M.R. Carey. I was Adam Blake. What publishers do, if you're not selling particularly well, but they quite like the work that you're doing, they'll basically fling pseudonyms at you and genres. They'll say, write in this genre, and we'll see if you can pick up a market. So I'd written the Castor novels, and the Castor novels were well received, but they were doing middling business. So they said, write a Dan Brown thriller. Everybody's writing Dan Brown thrillers, and everybody's buying the damn thing. So, so I did 2 thrillers as Adam Blake. I was contracted to write a third, and I went to my editor, Anne Clark, and said, I don't want to write that novel. I want to write this novel. And it took a lot of effort, really, to make that happen, because I'd changed agents in between times. So I was on a contract to write this book, and I had to go back to the agency, MBA, and say, could you let me out of this contract under which you would get some money, so I could sign a contract where you wouldn't? Would that be okay?
I bet they were thrilled.
They were wonderful, yeah. They were ecstatic, really. But we made it work, and that was Girl with All the Gifts, which is my 10th novel, and was a game changer in lots of ways.
It's a huge word of mouth success, the novel.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, no, seriously, I mean, I've had it recommended to me by so many people, and it's on my fucking shortlist, which is a good sign, I think, and I apologise for the swearing.
I'm not sure how it sort of, I mean, it did sort of snowball at a certain point. I think to some extent it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Orbit looked at it, and they saw that it had the potential, because I guess because of the central characters and the relationship between Melanie and Justina, they felt that people who didn't necessarily read zombie novels all the time might still get something out of this, but it had, for want of a better word, a sort of crossover potential. So they marketed the hell out of it. They sent review copies out to tons of people. They did a big print run of a proof copy, an advanced review copy, and sent that out to a lot of places, and they advertised it a lot. And I think it did well, partly as a result of those things.
So I am obviously a huge fan of the book, but we've just been watching the movie, and if there's one thing that's really comes through more strongly, even in the film itself, is those central characters, Justina and Melanie. And it almost takes you a moment to realise that you've got phenomenally strong female characters in there, which at this time is hugely important in science fiction. I mean, it's always been important, but it's a huge part of the conversation. Let's just chat about the character of Melanie for a second. Hugely fascinating, and just narrow down on the end of that when she makes a decision basically to kill us all off. Thanks, Mike. But it seems like that's a hugely conflicted decision, and one that's taken her the whole film to sort of come through to. And I just wanted to get your kind of take on what she's thinking in that sort of final 15-10 minutes of the film before we all die.
I think she's realised by that point that left to themselves, humanity 1.0 and the feral children, the post-human children, will destroy each other. That basically, probably humans have no future, but they'll last just long enough to destroy the possibility of anything else. Especially if somebody like Caldwell figures out a way to use the children to fuel a cure, to find a cure. So she ends that deadlock. She destroys humanity as a creative act, I think, as a way of giving the world some hope of a future. And we set it up, in both the novel and in the movie, through the story of Pandora. You have the sort of referent to this, which is you let all of the horrors out of the box, but there's something else at the bottom of the box, which is hope, the hope of something better coming along afterwards. So it's we saw it throughout as a happy ending, as the only possible happy ending from those premises.
I was going to ask you whether that was a bleak or a happy ending for you, and you're quite clear then.
It's hopeful. Yeah, it's hopeful ending.
Who agrees? Hopeful ending?
Yeah.
Yeah? Miserable, depressing, nihilistic ending? Anyone? A little bit.
There is in Boy on the Bridge, although Boy on the Bridge is mostly set.
Just about to ask you. So tell us about, for those who don't know, Boy on the Bridge is?
Boy on the Bridge is the prequel equal sequel to Girl with All the Gifts. So it starts a long time before Girl with All the Gifts, finishes a long time after. Most of it is set 10 years before. So the mobile laboratory that they find, which is named for Rosalind Franklin, the chemist who basically had a larger part than anybody else in the discovery of the structure of the DNA molecule, but didn't get the Nobel Prize for it. All of the men involved in the discovery did.